I've done a couple stories this week about McDonald's, including talking the other day about the differences in just the number of ingredients in McDonald's food in America versus the UK. Look, I don't judge anyone for eating McDonald's. I think everyone basically knows the deal when you eat McDonald's. Nobody really knows, or nobody really thinks it's healthy food. They just get their McDonald's to get, they got a lunch break, or they're in a new city, they're driving somewhere. It's this whole oh, McDonald's food is unhealthy thing is dumb because everyone knows that. But there is now a link between popular McDonald's order and colon cancer epidemic in young people. This one's pretty wild, and we're going to get into this story right after a quick word from this video sponsor, Private Internet Access. Shout out to this video's sponsor, Private Internet Access. Look, if you aren't using a VPN yet, you're completely missing out, and Private Internet Access is the one I use on all of my devices. If you've been following the news, you see that censorship, websites, apps are getting shut down in certain countries, all sorts of craziness. Well, a VPN helps you never have to worry about that. Private Internet Access also protects you from the prying eyes of hackers, internet service providers, and others that can view your personal data. Perhaps also just as importantly, Private Internet Access allows you to access region-restricted content from all over the world. Streaming services like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and more have different library options based on where you're located, and some shows simply cannot be accessed if you're not in the target location. Happens to me all the time. Many sports events also have regional blackouts. Well, VPNs can be a convenient way to make sure you're getting the content that you're paying for. Private Internet Access also allows you to protect an unlimited amount of devices all at the same time, so your entire household with a single subscription. And I've been working with Private Internet Access so long that I have an absolutely massive discount available to my viewers. Link in the description below. Get Private Internet Access today using my link. Save huge, protect your computers, access all the content that you've been paying for, and ensure that your internet is never censored. A food poisoning outbreak linked to McDonald's last year has taken a sinister new twist. One person has died, and 104 got infected by E.coli before they caught from a quarter pounder. Oh no, hamburgers that contained onions. Oh, not the quarter pounder. Contaminated by the deadly bacteria. The outbreak was declared in December, but this week, for the first time, E. coli was newly linked to the colon cancer epidemic in young Americans. There's no evidence that the McDonald's outbreak is linked to any cancer cases, but experts believe it highlights a growing problem of the food contamination in the United States could be have devastating consequences on people's health. E. coli is the bacteria found in the intestines of humans and animals. It can also be present in the environment, including contaminated water, food, and on surfaces. According to the CDC, zoonotic infectious diseases, outbreaks, hospitalizations, this and stuff. Final numbers for 2024 haven't been released yet, but it reports that there were 37 outbreaks of one strain of E. coli behind last year's deadly McDonald's outbreak. Experts say the rise in antibiotic-resistant bacteria, along with the mass production and factory farming, are driving outbreaks as they increase the chances of contamination and decrease the efficiency of drugs to fight the infection. E. coli's often contaminated water has been tainted with the human number twos, which have been used to irrigate crops or clean farming or manufacturing equipment, exposing the food to bacteria. Now, they're linking, they're making kind of a spurious link here to McDonald's, but I have a different article that kind of does a little bit better job of making that link because, E. coli and cancer perhaps is an issue, but it's not just McDonald's. McDonald's has E. coli problems or had an E. coli problem, but you can see the concern here. Colon cancer rates in Americans under 50. Under 50. Now, they've really zoomed in here to make it look more drastic. The x-axis here, it shows the years. It's only 3.5 to 4 to 4.5 to 5. From the very bottom, it's 3.5. On the very top, it's at 6.5. So, it has almost doubled. So the cancer rate in, people under 50 has nearly doubled since 2002. That's actually pretty wild. Going up to 6.5. Now, is it just fast food? Well, who knows? You see, we know that we have a lot of forever chemicals. We're learning more about stuff like Teflon, things like that. But you see this, a total of 104 people were infected across 14 states between September and October. Of those, 34 were hospitalized, 4 people developed HUS, and 1 person died. Burger King, Taco Bell, KFC, and Pizza Hut also stopped using onions as a proactive measure amid the outbreak. Luckily, I hate onions, so I'm pretty good. But these are pretty scary. This is almost a straight up line. And the date is over 20 years. So if we're going to go to 40 years, we could see this go from 3.5 to 12 per 10,000. I'm sorry, per 100,000. So it's a pretty big, I'd say it's a pretty big leap. Then you also have this. McDonald's, Burger King food packaging was found to have cancer-causing forever chemicals. Now lawsuits are rolling in. So this is in the packaging. My guess is it has something to do with the level of, they must have some sort of plastics in there, microplastics. I don't think microplastics cause cancer, but there's, they do collect in your balls, fellas. But McDonald's and Burger King were among the long list of national chain restaurants that were recently found to have cancer-causing forever chemicals in their food packaging. And now it looks like they might have to pay up for it. A recent consumer report revealed the use of harmful chemicals known as PFAS in the packages of several large chains, including Chick-fil-A, Taco Bell, McDonald's, and Burger King. And now, according to a recent report, the other shoe has dropped, with McDonald's and Burger King the target of a trio of lawsuits following the findings. The lawsuits include one filed in the South District of Illinois. PFAS are very, very bad. I forget what the exact is. I'm never going to pronounce it right, but it's I'm not going to be able to say this. It's not good. PFAS have, long-term per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Just know them as forever chemicals. That's the easiest way to remember them. That just means they build up in your body over time, and we just don't know. I mean, look at the rates of autism, right? Used to be 1 in 30,000, 30 years ago? Now it's 1 in 30. Yes, we've broadened the spectrum of what we call autism, and we've also gotten better at diagnosing it. But the idea that we can go from 1 in 30,000 to 1 in 30, and nobody's asking questions about that. It took RFK basically to be like, yo, this is kind of weird, Now, the lawsuits include one filed in here. Oh, yeah. Alleges McDonald's has exposed customers to high levels of PFAS that have caused a host of health concerns. PFAS are bad news, having been linked to an increase in some cancer types, autoimmune diseases, liver damages, and the list goes on. They're called forever chemicals because they do not naturally break down in the environment, hang around, and end up in our food and water supply. According to reports, many of us have already been exposed to the chemicals and likely some level of them in our blood. Now, I always tell people, if you want kind of a layman's introduction to PFAS, start with Teflon. And you can start with the movie Dark Waters. It's a nonfiction movie starring Mark Ruffalo. I know he's a dork, but it tells the tale of how DuPont knew that they knew about PFAS, knew about the chemicals in Teflon, and were also responsible for policing themselves. And so they're still losing lawsuits right now in 2025 over this. You have a lot of nonstick coatings, Teflon, all this kind of stuff. That's why there's a big switch to ceramic now. So I bought ceramic pots and pans. I don't know if they're any better at nonstick, but they certainly don't have PFAS, which is great. PFAS are not things you willingly want to add more to your body. And according to Consumer Reports, food packaging may be a pretty easy way to up your intake of nasty substances because it said that fatty and salty foods are more likely to absorb the chemicals. We know substances migrate into the food you eat, and then you basically have direct exposure in the packaging. Per Consumer Reports, restaurants including Cava, Chipotle, Freshii, Panera Bread, Sweet Green, and Wendy's have all committed to removing PFAS from their packaging by the end, committed to it by removing it to the end of 2021. Chick-fil-A says on their website that such packaging is expected to be phased out by the end of summer of 2022. This is, something that is more substantive in terms of, hey, why are PFAS bad? Why does McDonald's have PFAS? We're just getting smarter about this kind of stuff. A lot of the side effects and diseases that are linked to PFAS, to these things, we're just kind of finding out about now. And so I think it's good that, we're getting more involved in this kind of stuff. Fast food, seed oils, PFAS. I mean, I'm sure Luke right now, if I had him on the show, would be going absolutely bonkers about this. But, there's a reason that the Amish don't have the levels of colon cancer and all this kind of stuff that everyone else does. And it's pretty easy. Like, you don't have to be a science guy to figure out what's going on there. And this rise in colon cancer in young people is very, very concerning. I mean, that's almost doubled. Very, very concerning to me. And I hope that people start taking this stuff more seriously, and more restaurants, start agreeing to manually remove all this stuff.